Alright, so let's see. Here, let's press space. We press space on this. Oh, we did not add our new component here. So let's go back to our scene. Here's our player. Let's add our component on our player. So new. Welcome back to Arcade. I am Super Tommy, and in this video, we're gonna take a look at making a bomb attack in Phaser 3.55. So we're gonna use components like we've been doing recently in our Phaser 3 videos. So this is gonna take a starting point from our item shop series. So if you go to our YouTube channel, we have an item shop series. So let's go to videos. And so there's a 3-part item shop series that gets you basically a character here that walks around. So I'll go here, and there's a selection cursor, that square you see in front of that character, where you can then use it to say, oh, I want this pot. And we don't have that code in this particular example, but in the item shop series, we do all of that and show you how to do it. Now we're going to use that same starting point just before we make the shop. Where we have a character that can walk around. There's a selection cursor that you can then use to do things. In the item shop series, it was to pick a specific item to buy in your visual item shop. In this video with a bomb attack, we're going to use it to place a bomb in that specific location. So you're basically going to place a bomb where your character is facing. Now before we continue, if you want more of these videos, be sure to hit like on this video and subscribe to the Arcade YouTube channel for more videos on making games with Phaser 3 and other web technologies. So now let's get started on this video. If you don't know about components, do also check out our component video here, this component-based character movement. That's going to tell you how we make the character move. And then just overall on using the component pattern is this video over here. So check out our channel, hit subscribe so you don't miss any new videos on game development on the web. All right, so let's go here. I'm gonna make myself smaller. So the first thing we're gonna do here, let me just walk you through our bomb attack scene briefly here. So there's not much going on here. It's largely how we end, or rather start, in the item shop series before we add the dialogue and the actual more complicated item shop stuff. So what we have here is just a scene. We call it bomb attack. We're using our component service that we talk about. We have a cursor keys, that's the arrow keys in Phaser. We have a player sprite that we store in our class, so that's just a class property, all 3 of these. So we set up our component service, we get our cursor keys, we do some cleanup when the scene is shut down. And then here to start, we're adding these dummies, I'm calling them, but they're just pots. So these 5 pots up here, that's how we're gonna use to do the collision when the bomb explodes, because the bomb has to explode and then actually destroy stuff or damage things. So that's what these pots are for. It's just setting up the scene here. And then we make our player here. So we're adding a physics sprite. We're setting the body size just so that the box is within the bounds of our character. Then we create player animations, and that's, you know, fairly simple here. We go through all of this in that player-based component or component-based player movement video. And of course, all of this is, these assets are from, or this character asset is from our dungeon crawler series that you can find on our channel as well. And so here we're adding components to the player. So this is how we're handling keyboard movement, the animations to use depending on which input you're doing. So, you know, the up arrow key, the left arrow key, etc. So we set that up here. So these are reusable components. Here's a selection cursor component. So this is where this box comes from. So just a demo, if we just remove this component, our player no longer has a selection cursor box, but everything else, of course, moves. So that's one of the nice things about our component pattern, is that you can compose logic or behavior to your game objects this way. And then we're just adding colliders here so that our player will run into our pots. And there you go. So that's a very just simple scene setup like we've done before in countless other videos. So to start to add a feature here for creating bombs, or basically spawning bombs, we're going to make a new component, and that's how we add behaviors or functionality, or, you know, different game logic here with this component system, is to add them as components. And so we're going to make a new component. We're going to call it BombSpawner. So inside our components folder in source, BombSpawner.ts. there. Just double check some notes. Okay. So first thing, let's just import phaser. We're gonna need it. And then we want export default class here, BombSpawner. And now it's gonna implement our iComponent interface. Oops. Implements iComponent. Now iComponent is from our component service file. Let's just use relative paths. So let's go here. So this is just our component service class that we've discussed in other videos that you can look at. And the source for the item shop has this as well. And so we're not going to go too much into this, but this is where this stuff is coming from. This iComponent interface is from this file. And so we need to then actually do what the iComponent needs. And in this case, init is the required method. And it's going to give us a game object. Let's call it go phaser.gameObjects.gameObject. And then let's go private game object, phaser.gameObjects.gameObject. So let's just set that so that we have access to a game object when this component starts. Right. Now our components have a start, awake, and update hooks. So what we want to do is be able to put a bomb down when we press the space key, let's say. And so we're going to use a state machine to decide when we're placing a bomb. So let's make a state machine, and we do talk about state machines in our state machine video. So in our channel here, there's a state machine video. Let's see. State machine in TypeScript, and then we've since used a state machine in subsequent videos all over here. So definitely do subscribe to the channel and check that out. And so this is going to be of type state machine, which we have included in our project. All right, so this is what that looks like. And the source code for this, if you want the specific state machine, is also in our item shop series source code. Just go to that playlist and you'll find it. Okay, so let's make a constructor here. Then this dot state machine, new state machine. Now we're given a name, let's just call it BombSpawner. Oh, this is context, this, and then an ID, BombSpawner, just so that when we log things out here, it'll be easier to read. All right, so let's see. So our state machine is going to have two states, really, right? We have idle when we're doing nothing, or when we've spawned a bomb. So let's go this dot state machine dot add state. So first one, let's do it like this, idle, and let's just so far do nothing, add state spawn. So we're going to spawn a bomb, and now we're going to do things on enter and on update. So we don't, nothing on exit. So states have three phases: the enter, the update, and then the exit. So let's say we're going to do handle spawn bomb enter. And then on update, these are all optional. You don't have to. States can just be like idle where it doesn't do anything. Just to let us know, to let us reason about what state we're in. Spawn bomb update. Okay, so now we got to make these methods in our class here. Let's just set that up. And then our update. Cool. Let me just move my notes over. Okay. So when we're idle, we want to detect that the space key is pressed. So there's other ways to do this, but like you can just do just down, or just pressed in phaser. But in this case here, I'll just show you another way you can do this. Handle idle update, not on enter. You want to listen for the key down while we're in our idle state. And so we need the cursor keys that are created in our bomb attack scene. So in our constructor, let's take the cursors, which is going to be of type phaser.types.input.keyboard.cursor keys. here, private read-only cursors, which is the same type. Okay, so now we'll have access to our cursor keys. Now on update here, so this handle idle update will be called every frame. So if this dot cursors dot space dot is down, so once we press down, we're going to want to spawn a bomb now. So this dot stay machine dot set state spawn. So what this does is the second the space bar is pressed down, we're going to go to our spawn state, and our spawn state is going to actually create a bomb. And so just for ease, we're just going to create an actual bomb image in our scene. So let's get our scene. So because we have access to our game object, we can get the scene out of the game object. So this syntax, the object destructuring, is really the same as const scene this dot game object dot scene. Right, this is the same thing. This is just a shortcut, and it kind of looks nicer, especially if you're trying to destructure a bunch of other things out of it. Okay, so we have our scene. So now we want to do scene dot add dot say image, and we want it at the selection cursor location. So there's two ways we can get our selection cursor. We can either pass it through the constructor like this cursors, or we can actually get it by using our component service. So let's do the component service version. Now in this init method, if you go to our iComponent, how our system is set up, init also gives you the component service if you so happen to need it. And now we need it. So let's also get that. Components service, and then we're going to also save or store that as components component service. So this dot components. Cool. So now we have our components, so we can look up other components attached to this game object. And so let's go to start. So now there's start and awake as the two, let's say, initialization hooks, or like lifecycle hooks that get called. And so awake is called immediately after the component is added. Start gets called after all the components have been added. So it gets called after awake, but after all the awakes for all the components added to a game object in one frame at least. So now we want our selection cursor. So let's put that over here. Private selection cursor, and it is going to be, I think it's just a check. It just needs to have an X and a Y. Oh no, sorry, it's the selection cursor component. Selection cursor, so it could not exist. So this dot selection cursor equals this dot components dot get component, no, find component, since we're searching for it for this game object, and we want the selection cursor component. Right, so this could be undefined if it just happens to not have it, so we need to handle for those cases. So this image, now back to our image here, we have our selection cursor. Back to our image here, we're going to need to place it somewhere. So let's give it an X and a Y. So let's say, let's get a position. So our selection cursor could be undefined. It could just not exist if we didn't add it to this game object. So this dot selection cursor, so if it exists, we want to do this dot selection cursor dot selector position. This is just a property on our selection cursor component that we talked about in the item shop series, right? We'll go here. So this exists. That's how we know where the character selection cursor is on the screen. Now, if for some reason this is not there, like it was not added to this game object, we need a fallback, and that fallback is going to be just the game object XY. So dot X, Y, this dot game object dot Y. So then the bomb will be placed where the character is standing. So this game object doesn't have X and Y because the phaser game object type here doesn't necessarily have an X and a Y. So what we're going to do is want to use the transform component as well. Well, that's one way to do it. Or we can use a sprite, since we sort of know this is going to be attached to a sprite. It's a little less reusable if we think it's going to be a sprite, but we attach it to a non-sprite. So let's just say we do it the better way. So we do this, and phaser.gameObjects.components.transform. So this is, we go here. This gives it an X, Y, Z, W scale, various transform properties to the game object. And by and large, whatever game object we use is most likely going to have this transform. And so let's see. So let's also go here. Save that. Boom. Now that means our game object has X, has Y, has scale, stuff like that. That was in that transform component. If you look into Phaser's source code itself, any sprite, image, physics sprite, physics image all have a transform component. Okay, so in this image, we're going to set position.x, position.y, and then we want our bomb. Now that is defined, so we have a preloader scene, and we have our character, our bomb, and our pot assets. So these are all just created in our preloader scene here. And so that's how we're getting it in our BombSpawner. So this is going to add the bomb image to our screen. Let me just double check here. Great. So we add that, good. And so now this will enter, and then we can just go this dot state machine dot set state and go back to idle. So we may actually not need this update. What we could do in this update is actually also do it, for example, here, if this dot cursors dot space dot is up, so the is up. So the second so what we're doing here is we get it down, we go to the spawn state, we get it up, and we exit back to the idle state. So let's just say we do it this way. All right, so let's see. Here, let's press space. We press space on this. Oh, we did not add our new component here. So let's go back to our scene. Here's our player. Let's add our component on our player. So new BombSpawner, and we want to give it the cursor keys. So it's this dot cursors. Good. All right, now let's see. Space, and that did not update because our state machine needs to be updated. Let's see. So in our component, like I mentioned earlier, there's the awake, start, and update hooks. So our state machine needs to be updated as well, and every update tick we get a delta time. That's the time since last frame. So this dot state machine dot update dt. All right, let's try this again. And that didn't work either. So let's see what we're missing. This dot state machine. Yes. We want to also then set an initial state. All right, so state machine changed from no state to idle, right? We want to see these logs here. Now let's press space, and there's our bomb. So you can see our state machine, our BombSpawner, that's this ID we gave it so that we can more easily see in the logs what's happening. When we pressed down, we went from idle state to spawn state. This space is from the selection cursor. And then when we hit the up key, or when the space bar went back up, we went from spawn state to idle state. And so when we went to spawn state, these two methods happened. The handle spawn bomb enter, we did the thing, and then we went to update, which then detected that the space is now no longer pressed, and we changed back to the out of state. So there is our bomb. And so now, with the way this works, we can actually put this component on any game object. So if you wanted to, you can try putting it on other things. But now what we want to do is have a countdown on our bomb, right? So when in these usual bomb attacks, you place a bomb, there's like a countdown, and then the bomb explodes. So let's add another component here to add countdown to our bomb. So this is just the first pass work in progress version of our BombSpawner component. We'll have to take care of collision colliders, or adding collision to other things to make it so that when we drop a bomb here and it explodes, let's see these two pots that are within the radius of the explosion will also get destroyed. But first we need to make a countdown to know when the explosion should happen. So let's make a countdown component. Let's go here, countdown.ts. Now it's going to be very similar to our BombSpawner component, right? So let's do that. Now export default class countdown. Now we're going to implement the same I component interface. So that keep this relative in case your project doesn't have that tilde alias. Okay, so we have our countdown. So we need our init. We're going to give it a game object, phaser.gameObject.gameObject, private game object, phaser.gameObjects.gameObject, this.gameObject go. All right, so let's think about what we need to do here. So we need in our countdown to basically wait, let's say 3 seconds before something happens. So let's go down here. We want to specify what the actual time is, right? So let's get a constructor and we'll pass in the seconds to count down. So let's see. Let's call this start seconds number, and we'll do this start seconds, but I think we're going to want it in milliseconds actually. So when let's just do this in ms, and so it'll be seconds times 1000, so that'll be start seconds in milliseconds. Right, so when our update gets called, we get that dt, which is delta time since last frame. So update, we get a dt, and this is delta time in milliseconds. So basically we're going to accumulate this time, and once it reaches this value, right, like how long we're actually counting down for, then we will do something, and that's when our countdown has finished. So let's have an accumulator. So private accumulated time, start that at 0. This.accumulated time plus equals dt. So it starts at 0. It's going to add every delta time, every number of milliseconds since the last frame. And then when the accumulated time is greater than or equal to the start seconds in milliseconds. Maybe start seconds is not the right variable name here, but total seconds, I call this total seconds. Rename symbol. Total seconds. Right, that sounds better. Actually, we can do this. If it's less than, we're going to do nothing. And then once it is finished, let's just say we want to remove this component from that game object since we're done with it. So let's again here get our I component service. I component service. So we just want to remove it to be organized. We may be able to just leave it on it, but let's just say we clean it up. So remove component, this.game object, and then I think this. So we're removing ourselves from this game object. And for now, let's just do console.log countdown finished. And so we should also basically make the bomb go away. Now we're not going to do this in the countdown component logic since it's really only handled counting down and letting whoever wants to care about the countdown do something. So let's go here. Oh no, we need to add our countdown to our bomb. So in our BombSpawner component, we can add a component to the bomb we make. So this is in our handle spawn bomb enter. Let's say bomb Now, because we have access to our component service, we can go add component on the bomb game object, a new countdown component, just seconds, let's say 3, and let's see what happens. Now we should count down to 3, let's see, and it should say countdown finished, and there we go. So now we see our countdown component in fact did work. So that's the initial parts here. So we're coming up at 25-ish minutes. So this is going to be part 1 for this bomb attack series. Come back for part 2, where we're going to react to this countdown being finished, and we're going to basically make the bomb explode. We'll get rid of the bomb and put a collider in place so that anything within that explosion radius will get a on-collide event that they can handle what to do, which is either lowering health or just destroying it completely. In our case, we're going to completely destroy these pots when they're collided with a bomb explosion. So if you enjoyed this video, do hit like and subscribe for more videos on making games on the web, and so that you don't miss on any of our component videos or state machine videos or anything like that.